Good morning. Sabah khair. Konnichiwa. Konbawa. I'm so happy to welcome everybody this morning in Jordan and this afternoon in Japan for the event today. I'm Dr. William Nago. I'm the Director of International Relations, and we have a wonderful program today. With no further ado, I will introduce Dr. Sharif to the Vice President of the University to give our welcoming remarks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. William. Thank you, Lean, for all these arrangements. I would like to welcome Mr. Koki Toyama from the embassy. Nice to have you here. And Mrs. Sara Veruca from the Embassy of Japan. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. I hope you are excited as much as I am in listening to this presentation. I'm not going to say much. I just remembered, and I was saying to Mr. Koki about a presentation which we attended online, and I think it was back in February, maybe February or March, for Professor Ishiguro Hiroshi, who's the Director of Intelligent Robotics Laboratory. And he's a famous robotics innovator and scientist from Japan. And he is famous for actually creating a robot in his own image. So it's actually quite eerie when you watch him on TV and you can see he has a robot who looks exactly like him. And it was a fascinating lecture. I enjoyed it a lot. And I'm sure no exception, today will be no exception. We will also enjoy this lecture by Professor OKAMURO Hiroyuki, who is professor from the Graduate School of Economics at Hitotsubashi University. So thank you very much for arranging this, and thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you all Dr. Yazan Hijazi, an entrepreneur, a scholar, and the director of the core at HTU. Thank you.
Ohayo gozaimasu. Did I pronounce it properly? Good morning. Good morning, Sabah al-Khair. It's to be moderating this session today with Professor OKAMURO from Hitotsubashi University. I'd like to invite Mr. Toyama Koki before we begin to address a couple of welcoming behalf of His Excellency Ambassador of Japan.
Good morning. Unfortunately, like today's ambassador is not able to come, so I'm going to read his message. So it is very unfortunate for me not to be able to attend the seminar today due to unavoidable circumstances. However, it still is my great pleasure that this hybrid seminar on innovation would be held in cooperation with Al-Hussein Technical University. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to President and Vice President and Dr. Yazan Hijazi and Dr. Abdullah and Dr. William Nogel and their colleagues for their efforts to realize this opportunity. And today, Professor OKAMURO, one of the leading experts in this field, will give us an introduction to the public policy to promote the industry academia government collaboration. There is no need to explain that the innovation is a key to stimulate the economy, but it is easier said than done. In order to achieve this, it is imperative for any country to gather and integrate all of the wisdom and expertise. This is a universal question, but particularly relevant to Japan, as our system is known for so-called tatewari, compartmentalized structure. I hope this seminar will inspire many Jordan experts and students to promote the innovation, which is conducive to the economic growth in Jordan. On a different note, it would be worth mentioning here that every year, Japan sponsors several Jordanian students to earn a degree at Japanese universities. These selected students have an access to full scholarship to explore the academic field under the guidance of excellent professors. The application for the next batch will open in next spring. So if you are interested, I highly recommend you to check the website or SNS accounts of the Japanese embassy in Jordan near the time. So finally, let me reaffirm our enthusiasm to strengthen cooperation with Jordan in many fields. The year 2024 will mark the 17th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Japan and Jordan. We will explore a number of opportunities to strengthen people-to-people ties between the two countries to introduce diverse dimensions of Japan to people in Jordan. Ambassador of Japan to Jordan, OKAMURO. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oki. And back to our program. So again, we'd like to welcome all of you, President Ismail, distinguished guests, and representatives of Japan Embassy. So HTU is a new university, a big dream and a big vision. We understand very clearly that in order to make impact on the innovation in ecosystem, we need to be doing a lot of research, but more importantly, we need to be doing development. I think Jordan has been doing a good job in research. Our publications and our citations are growing, but there's an issue with that. How much of that is translating into actual development? So with us today is Professor Hiroyuki OKAMURO. It's a pleasure to have you, sir. Professor OKAMURO is a renowned scholar and researcher. He has a PhD in economics from University of Bonn in Germany, a BA and an MA in economics from Hitotsubashi University, where he currently has a position. He has a vast teaching experience actually globally. So he understands different ecosystems other than Japan, for example, UK, Germany, Italy, and Hungary. His research interests are around economics of entrepreneurship and small business with a focus on innovation, R&D, and policy evaluation. So we will be talking a lot about policy today. He's a heavily published scholar with over 80 publications, and today he'll be sharing some thoughts with us around his views on innovation. How does that apply, and how does innovation come out of universities? What does the university industry collaboration look like? How should that be managed? How can policies support that goal? So without further ado, it's a real pleasure to have you with us, Professor OKAMURO, and the floor is yours. And we don't hear him.
I'm muting. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for your introduction. Just a moment. Slideshow. So again, good morning, everybody. I feel very honored to be here online. So, and thank you for the invitation to the specific opportunity, the special seminar for Jordan. So, I will talk about the innovation system or innovation through a university industry research collaboration in Japan, and also its policy support. And because Dr. Yazan introduced me briefly, I can skip my first slide. But anyway, I have been researching about the innovation and entrepreneurship, and also its policy evaluation, especially focused in Japan. So another page is about a brief introduction by university. So Hitotsubashi University, my affiliation, was established in 1875. So almost 150 years ago, the first commercial college in Japan, the first business school in Japan. And today, Hitotsubashi University is one of the top Japanese universities in social sciences, So unfortunately, we don't have any departments of natural sciences or engineering, but as such, at a specific social science university, we are the only one among the national universities in Japan. And now you see in my background a beautiful picture. This is our one of the main buildings, an auditorium in the main campus, which was built in 1930. Okay, so today, Hitotsubashi University was one of the 10 specially designated universities in Japan. This is only one in social sciences. And we are now ranked among the top 100 universities in the QS, World University Ranking, for economics and econometrics. But we are also good in business or management. We have 4 faculties: commerce, economics, law and social studies, and also coding graduate schools. But we have also other institutions such as graduate school for linguistics and cultural studies, and the specific schools such as the business school, law school, public policy school, and also the renowned Institute of Economic Research, with which we collaborate closely. And it's noteworthy that soon we will start a new school on social data science in the next April. So at Hitotsubashi, a relatively small university in Japan, we have around 340 faculty members and a little bit more than 6,000 students, among which around 1/3 are studying in graduate schools. We have the main campus in the western suburb of Tokyo in a very quiet area since 1930. But we have also a downtown campus in Tokyo, which is specific for a business school and public policy school. And you see here, this is a logo of a university. This is a staff of Mercury. Mercury is a god of commerce and communication in the Greco-Roman mythology, and the CC stand for commercial college. So now I come to my presentation. So here is the outline of my talk today, and after a short introduction, I will talk about the importance of university industry R&D collaboration for promoting innovation. And so I will then show some data about R&D in innovation in Japan and the world, mainly from the MEXT and the OECD statistics. The MEXT is our Ministry of Education, Sport, Culture, Science and Technology in Japan. So the key point is that it is quite difficult both for universities and the private firms to collaborate in R&D. Especially, I will argue that I will argue why R&D collaboration, especially with universities or public research institute, is difficult, especially for SMEs, small businesses. So the second half of my talk is about the development of university industry, R&D collaboration. So institutional policy change and its policy in Japan. And the last section, maybe this main section, is dedicated to the successful or efficient management of university R&D university industry R&D collaboration, and how the policy can support the development of effective university industry R&D collaboration. So here, the discussion will be based on my previous researches. So the quick introduction. So what is innovation? So maybe you have heard of Joseph Schumpeter. So Schumpeter was one of the great economists and who introduced the concept of innovation and entrepreneurship into economic theory. So Schumpeter wrote a famous book, the Theorie der wirtschaftlichen Entwicklung, in English, the theory of economic development, in his early age, in 1912. So in his book, he proposed a new concept, new combinations of existing resources. The concept, new combination, is today called innovation. So he argued further that these new combinations of existing resources are the engine of economic growth. So in his book, Schumpeter categorized or classified the 5 types of innovations: the development of new products, new processes, new sales channels, new materials and sources, and new market organizations. And today, these first 2 categories are regarded or called as a technological innovation. So sometimes the policymakers and also researchers talk of a wide range of innovation, and recently more and more attention is paid to this one, market organizations, and also new organizations for innovation, like a new organization, private firms. So now, I will focus on the university industry research collaboration as new types of these organizations. Well, both in the business and also in research, we also often ask how to measure innovation. So there are several patterns to measure innovation. One easy process pattern is to count the new number of new products and processes. But the economists often use patents or other types of IPR, intellectual property rights, such as trademarks, as measures of innovation. In economics, in microeconomics, often we proxy the decrease in marginal cost as new processes. But very often we use TFP, namely total factor productivity, as a measure of innovation very widely. So in this sense, in the empirical economics, innovation is defined as the upper shift of production function or the extension of production frontier. So you may not hear functions here. So in economics, we use several types of production functions, but here, very quickly, I mention the simplest pattern of the so-called Cobb-Douglas production function, which is also often used in economic analysis. So here, VA, value added, formulated in this function, which is a function of a K, the capital input, the L, labor input, and the alpha and beta are the parameters. So in this Cobb-Douglas function, it assumes that alpha plus beta equals 1. So because this is an exponential function, it will be easier to transform it by a natural logarithm into linear regression models. So in this way, we can formulate it as follows. The log natural total factor productivity is the difference between the log natural value added and the contribution of a log natural capital input and low natural labor input. So it means that total factor productivity, or the innovation, or the increase in productivity is the additional value added, which is not purely explained by the increase in the capital input or labor input. So it means, or it suggests, the new combinations of existing resources, especially capital and labor. So it is the way we or the economists often measure innovation. So next question is, who drives innovation? So there are several theories, but there are two major conceptual theories, both by Joseph Schumpeter. The young Schumpeter, in his major book, The Theory of Economic Development, in 1912, argued that individual entrepreneurs, such as Bill Gates or Zuckerberg, so they are, or Elon Musk. So these individual entrepreneurs drive innovation. But later Schumpeter in 1942 argued that because innovations are more and more performed in large scales, and because R&D and innovations are getting more and more complicated. Now, it means that in 1940s, it is a rather large organization, such a large laboratory of giga firms, which drives innovation. So after that, there are several ways of empirical estimations. So which are, so individual entrepreneurs or large firms, large organizations are the real or major driver of innovation. But today we know that not only individual entrepreneurs, or not only a large organization, large firms or large universities, but maybe more the inter-organizational teams or collaboration projects can be major drivers of innovation. So this is why today I focus on university industry research collaboration. So this type of collaboration projects are often called R&D consortium. So it means that a joint R&D project comprising universities, public institutes, and private firms. But today, in this lecture or seminar, I unify the concept to university industry or UI R&D collaboration. So I repeatedly mentioned that university industry research collaboration is important for innovation. But why? So there are major 4 reasons to support this concept. The first one is that such research collaboration brings much research fund to university researchers. So we researchers cannot promote our own scientific research without research funds. The second one is for private industry. So through university industry research collaboration, private firms can exploit advanced scientific knowledge, especially comes from research universities. And because both academic researchers and business researchers cooperate, heterogeneous knowledge on both sides can be integrated. And lastly, through university industry research collaboration, scientific seeds on the university side and market needs on the private business side can be matched well. So it's a base for further practical or dramatic innovation. So now my research question to propose to you is whether public policy can promote innovation by supporting such university industry R&D collaboration and how it is possible. So before I go into this main topic, I will show you some figures illustrating the R&D and innovation in Japan and in some other countries. The mixed data, so Japanese international commercial data, and it doesn't include Jordanian data. So, but yeah, Dr. Yarzan such me to cite this data, to find this data under UNESCO statistics. So anyway, so this first figure shows the share of research and development expenditures to GDP in percentage. So you see that, I copied it from the Japanese data book in English and Japanese. So you see here both English and Japanese. So, and the red line here, this shows Japan. And you see that, and the time span is from the early 1980s to recent years, to 2018. You see that Japan showed until recently the highest ratio of our expenditures to GDP in the world. Only recently, after 2011, this is South Korea, or Korea overtook Japan and other countries rapidly. And today, Korea had a world top ratio of R&D expenditure to GDP with a 4.5%. In Japan, the ratio is now around 3.3%. And you see here, in the United States, 2.8%, the EU average, 2.2%, and so on. So in major R&D intensive countries like Europe and the USA, the R&D expenditure to GDP is around 2%, 3%. So now China is catching up, but you see that, yeah, Jordan is quite doing well in the world ranking. But as of 2016, according to UNESCO statistics, the Jordan ratio of R&D expenditure to GDP is 0.7%. This is about the Russian or Indian level. So the next figure shows the share of researchers to labor force, to 10,000 labor force in persons. So again, this red line shows Japan. So this is increasing in also in the other countries. But now in Japan, about 128 researchers per 10,000 labor force. Again here, South Korea overtook Japan some years ago, now at the world top. But in some major countries, the ratio of researchers to labor force, to 10,000 labor force, is around 80 or 100. So I hear that the Jordan is catching up, especially in higher education and the research. But as for 2006, according to UNESCO statistics, in Jordan, so we found 20 researchers per 10,000 inhabitants and not labor force. So this is around about comparable to the Chinese level. So also China is catching up. So you know that R&D are not only performed by private firms. So in most countries, public R&D expenditures, especially by national government, play a major role. So this picture shows the share of public and private R&D expenditures in several countries. So light blue shows public government expenditures, the share, while yellow lines show the share of private R&D expenditures. and gray is for foreign firms. So again, here, yeah, Japan, the second line or bar is measured by a full-time equivalent of researchers. So it shows that in Japan, more than 80% of total R&D expenditures are made by private firms. In some other countries, in the United States, Germany, France, United Kingdom, EU average, and in other countries, the ratio public R&D expenditures are higher. So it's noteworthy that in Japan, R&D is especially strongly performed by private firms. So we often classify the types of R&D expenditures or innovation between basic research, light blue here, applied research, light green, and development here in yellow. So development is very close to the commercialization, or the R&D to commercialize. While basic research is so very basic, it has no clear purpose. So you don't know yet to what purpose, to which product your research leads. But of course, basic research is also important, especially for universities. So it shows that in Japan here, the share of basic research is relatively low, while the share of more the ratio of development more across the market is higher. So you see here that especially in European countries, the ratio of basic and applied research are higher, while development share is lower. So here in Germany, statistically they have no distinction between applied and development research. So maybe this figure is also interesting for you. It shows the trends in the number of patent applications in each major country. So again, Japan is this red line. So the number of patent applications measured by the country of origin from Japan is relatively stable in the last 20 or 30 years. But here you see China. So until the early this century, the number of patent applications from Chinese individuals or Chinese firms to the world was quite small, but it increased dramatically since the early years from this century, and then they overtook Japan and the USA 10 years ago, now growing. So it's noteworthy that this is not this figure does count the number of patent applications by Chinese firms or Chinese people in China. But this count the Chinese patent applications or Japanese and US patent applications, not only in that country, but also other countries. So now I come to the difference across firm sizes. So this table from the OECD database compares the SME share in business R&D in several countries, and also the SME share in public R&D support in several countries. So these blue bars shows the SME share in business or private R&D. So you see this is Japan. So this is Germany, USA, Korea, UK, France, and so on. This is Denmark, Italy. So here, Japan, you see that only 5% of private R&D expenditure are conducted by SMEs. but it is written here that in Japan, firms with less than 10 million Japanese yen capital, so mostly very small firms, are excluded from the calculation. So this ratio may be underestimated. But anyway, it showed that compared to other countries, the major player of Japanese R&D and also innovation are large firms. And the red bars shows SME share of government-funded business R&D. So in some other countries, like Belgium, Greece, and this is Czech Republic. So the government support small business R&D very strongly. In Japan, it is only 14%. The ratio is much higher in Germany or Korea. So this table is very important for today's lecture. So this shows the share of innovative firms with university collaborations, R&D collaborations. So the baseline is the number of innovative firms, and we count or we measure how high the share of the firms, innovative firms with university collaborations. Here, you see the Japan on the left-hand edge here. You see the blue bars shows the share of innovative SMEs with university collaborations to total innovative SMEs. This is not the ratio share is low, not only in Japan, but also in other OECD countries. The share is low. So it can raise the question why the share of innovative SMEs with university collaborations are so low, not only in Japan, but also in other countries. So red bars show the share of large innovative firms with university collaborations. So the ratio is much higher than the ratio of small innovative firms. But it was noteworthy that in Japan, this ratio is lower than some other countries. So based on this information, the question can be raised why R&D is difficult, especially for SMEs, and also why our R&D collaboration is difficult. So about the first question. So the economic theory have some answers to this question. The first one is the constraints of internal resources. So because of small farm size, especially SMEs, have limited amount of capital or human resource or advanced knowledge. So they should depend on external resources, especially external capital knowledge. However, they have also limited access to external capital resources due to high risk of R&D and also information asymmetry. So it is well known that R&D are combined with high risk. You know, the more drastic the innovation, the more risky it is. And yeah, the funder or the lender of capital cannot know whether the R&D project of these firms are reliable, for example. So under information asymmetry between the borrowers and lenders of capital, it is not easy to fund the necessary capital or resource for R&D. And moreover, SMEs have often limited access to external knowledge due to high hurdle for technology transfer and collaboration. So I will come to this major problem later in my lecture. but shortly. So my own research or survey shows that most SMEs do not know where to go. So in which university, which professor is the expert in which field. So most of them don't know that. So this is a lack of information. So they hesitate to ask for university professors. So there's another story of economies of scale and scope for R&D. So and you know economies of scale. So in economics, it is so the larger scale is the production, the lower the average cost. And when I applied to R&D expenditures, it can be said that the larger the scale of R&D, the more effective will be this project. And we have also economic scope. It means the benefit of diversification. You see that, you know that usually larger firms are more diversified than smaller firms. And the more diverse firms have diverse resources, diverse knowledges within the firm. So within the firm, because of this diversity, the large firms have more benefit for R&D than smaller firms. So this is this discussion. And moreover, larger firms have more complementary asset for innovation than smaller firms. What is complementary asset? For example, larger firms have larger production unit and also some special divisions like intellectual property division, production control division, quality control division, or legal division to cope with intellectual property problems. So because of these complementary assets for innovation, large firms are more advantageous than smaller firms in R&D and innovation. So all these factors suggest the advantages of innovation for larger firms. So this support the Schumpeter hypothesis number 2. Number 1. So anyway, so it is there are the reason why a government should support R&D, especially by smaller firms, especially by subsidy. So another question is why university industry R&D collaboration is difficult, especially small firms. It is notable that the university industry collaboration is not only for small firms, but also difficult for large firms. It shows the last slide, last figure. Because university researchers and business researchers often have very different aims or interest and priorities in their research. So it is often told that even in Japan, even in the same research field, the people at universities and the people in firms have different languages. So the coordination and communication between academia and business research is very difficult, even for large firms. But it is especially difficult, or more difficult for small firms. One thing is that a majority of SMEs, small firms, do not conduct explicit R&D activities. So maybe they have informal R&D activities, but not so formal R&D activities. And those firms which do not conduct their own R&D are not motivated to engage in R&D collaboration with other organizations, especially universities, with higher knowledge. And the economist Cohen and Levinthal decades ago argued the importance of absorptive capacity. What is absorptive capacity? This is the ability to learn from others, especially the scientific knowledge. So they argued that it is important to conduct own research, not only to promote innovation by themselves, but also and especially to learn from others' research. So because a major part of SMEs or many firms do not conduct own R&D, they have little absorptive capacity to learn from university knowledge. So this is why they are less motivated to conduct or to engage in university industry research collaboration. Moreover, as I just mentioned before, there are information lack about university and academic research for SMEs. Therefore, many SMEs feel a high hurdle to search for and collaborate with university partners. So this is a problem at the side of private firms, especially SMEs. But we have also problems for or against university collaboration at the university side. So university professors, researchers are motivated to engage in the collaboration with private firms also because of research fund. Without research fund, we can conduct research. We cannot promote research or innovation. And usually, small firms can offer only small amount of research budget to university partners, while larger firms can provide a very high amount of research fund to universities. In this sense, large firms are more attractive partners for university researchers than small firms. But maybe more important is the content of joint research or topic. And often SMEs ask for collaboration for universities or with universities with the research topic which is very close to the practice. So they have very concrete problems, and they ask for university professors to solve these so-called small questions. But university professors are more interested in big research, more basic research, which can change the scientific world dramatically. And often there are large firms that offer university professors with scientifically more interesting research topics. So in this sense, university professors in general have lower incentives to collaborate with small businesses than larger firms. And another point is that majority of university professors are very busy in their own research, and they cannot engage in many projects at the same time. So they have priorities. So they can choose the project research topics which are most interesting for them. So therefore, governments promote university industry R&D collaboration, especially for SMEs, to support SME innovation, because they believe that, the government believes that SMEs should also contribute to innovation, because they are the major player in the total economy, because there are so many. And they're also very research intensive firms or innovation intensive firms among SMEs. Okay, then sorry. So now I come to the second section or next section about the institutional change and policy change in Japan. So I showed that the university industry research collaboration in Japan is not lower than other major countries. But you know that the university industry research collaboration in Japan has a long history. So in the mid-19th century, so in about 150 years ago, Japan opened the country to Western countries, and we started the industrialization and modernization in the late 19th century. And we have several successful cases of university industry research collaboration already at the beginning of the Japanese industrialization, so in the late 19th century. It is notable that just after the modernization of the Japanese economy society and in the mid-19th century, Japanese government started establishing high schools and universities. So Hitotsubashi University was established in 1875, just some years after the Meiji Restoration, the start of the Japanese modernization. So university industry research collaboration has in Japan a long history. However, the problem with that before and during the World War II, many Japanese university researchers were forced or suggested to collaborate with Japanese military army for weapon production and so on. So after World War II, former university industry collaboration declined for decades, for at least 30 years, in reaction to these negative wartime experiences. But it is notable that the informal relationships continued between university professors and especially large firms. It means that some large firms which have special connections to university professors provided scholarship, especially for a graduate course student, PhD student. But the policy change occurred at the beginning of the 1980s. So next, our Education and Science Ministry allowed in 1983 the universities to formally collaborate in R&D with private firms. So before that, it was formally prohibited. But then suddenly next changed mind, and they allowed the collaboration between universities, private firms. And before that, Japanese government promoted a large-scale R&D collaboration between large Japanese firms. But now, after 1983, large-scale collaboration between Japanese universities and large firms were made possible. But another major change was in mid-1990s. In 1995, Japanese government enforced the Science and Technology Basic Law. After that, every 5 years, the Science and Technology Basic Plan was amended to include new development. So we have still now, until now, still this Science and Technology Basic Plan, which shows the basic direction for the Japanese science and technology policy. According to this policy change, since the late 1990s, the number of university industries or the collaborations in Japan has drastically increased up to 30,000 projects at the end of the fiscal year to 2017. You see that in this figure, the number of collaborative research projects between private firms, etc., and also including public agencies and universities are shown. So this orange line are the number of projects engaged by national universities, and gray line count the joint project engaged by other public universities. And this yellow line count the number of the project by private universities. You know that today in Japan, we have around 780 universities. 780 universities. Among them, we have 86 national universities, or more precisely, national university corporations, and around 90 or 80 public, like prefecture or city universities, and around 600 private universities. So, as we count the number of universities, the private universities are the major players in Japan, the higher education institutions, but research and development, especially advanced research, is concentrated on national universities. So here you see that at the beginning of the 1980s, so there are only 50 or 100 projects, and the number of projects increased since the late 1990s and dramatically increased in the first decade in this century. I'll show you the reason later. Now stabilized for national universities, but the number of private universities engaging in UI collaboration has been increasing. Sorry. So major players of university industry collaborations are national universities, but other public and private universities are catching up recently. So this is more recent statistics. Yeah, we have the count project for public and private universities only between 2003 and 2020. So you see that number of the project engaged by public and private universities have been increasing. And you see that the joint R&D project between universities and SMEs have been relatively stable, around 30%. And this figure, this also from Mixed, showed that the number of joint research projects engaged by SMEs increased distinctly since the early 1980s until the beginning of this century, and then decreased in share. So number of collaborations increased further, but the share of large firms increased again. So today, the share of university industry research collaborations engaged by SMEs is around 30% or a little bit lower. Okay, some more information about the development of public policies supporting university industry research collaboration in Japan. So we have the first science and technology basic plan in the late 1990s. What happened there? Especially especially noteworthy is the change of university system. In 1998, at several Japanese universities, TLO, namely Technology Licensing Offices, were established, especially by support, with support by Mixed, the Education Science Ministry. And in other countries, especially in the EU, European Union, they are called Technology Transfer Office, TTO, what in Japan is called TLO. So by establishing TLO, universities could manage, control, manage, and commercialize their own patents. 1 year later, in 1999, the so-called Japanese Bayh-Dole Act was enforced in Japan. So Bayh-Dole Act in the USA, the original one, was already enforced in 1980. It enabled the universities to use the results of the research of their universities funded by the government. So before that, the university or university professors cannot own, cannot patent the results of own research by themselves, because the patents belong to the state, the government. But after the Bayh-Dole Act, it was possible that university professors or university corporations can own a patent, apply and own their own patent and license this patent to private firms. So it motivated universities to strategically use their patents and licenses. So in year 2000, national university professors were allowed to work at private firms as outside board members. Before that, it was not possible. We can't work formally at private universities, but it's made possible. But it's made possible, for example, that university professors establish their own firms, academic ventures after that. So what happened then in the under the second period, science and technology basic plan? So the Japanese government started the cluster policies. So there were two competing simultaneous cluster policies. One by METI, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. Another is by mixed Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, Technology. So Science Ministry. So both ministries almost at the same time started their own cluster project policies. These two cluster projects, which continued until 2009 or 2010, and has the same aims to promote regional innovation by supporting a regional university industry collaboration. But the project scheme was very, very different. So this is why I focused on these policies, and I empirically analyzed the effect of these policies. So I will talk about that at the end of this seminar. So there were change to support the academic startups by universities, and also to support the IPR strategy by universities. And it was noteworthy that in 2004, all national universities in Japan were transformed to more independent university corporations. But it is noteworthy that after that, professors of the national university in Japan are rather less independent of the government. So we have to make our own university plans, business plans, but it is strictly controlled by the government, very strictly controlled by the government. So we are now more getting dependent on the government, unfortunately. But we have to gather external fund, so from private business and so on, from other agencies. So because of time constraint, I cannot go into details what happened then, but the cluster policies continued until later. But unfortunately, in 2009, there was a policy change in the national government in Japan, and a new government stopped the cluster policy, especially by mixed. But then the ministries changed the strategy. So under the fourth period, science technology basic plan, they started the joint cluster programs. So not only by each ministry, but some ministries like METI, mixed, and MAF is agriculture and forestry ministry. So the ministries collaborate in their joint cluster programs. So until now, there have been several new policies to promote academic startups, to promote university industry research collaborations, or innovation ecosystems, and so on. So almost every year makes a METI start a new project. So today's situation is very complicated because of so many new projects. So in this last section, I will talk about the management or how to collaborate, or how to manage the collaboration between university and private firms more efficiently or more effectively. So as I mentioned before at the beginning of this lecture, usually university industry research collaboration have major problems. It's very difficult to efficiently manage this project because university researchers and business researchers have very different aims and research interests and priorities between them. So they live in a different world, although they research in the same subject, such as biotechnology or life science. So more concretely, university researchers are interested in to publish our own findings as soon as possible. And we are not interested to commercialize the outcomes of these findings. But business research are different. So they tend to hide, conceal their findings until they publish it in patents. You see? So they tend to conceal their findings, but their priority is to commercialize their findings or the results of their researches as soon as possible. So there are such differences between these worlds. But university industry research collaboration may benefit both sides. So it is necessary from the viewpoint of the public policy to bridge and to better coordinate between the business researchers and academic researchers for more efficient university industry collaboration. Moreover, especially small firms, SMEs, are more likely to collaborate with universities, less likely to collaborate with universities rather than large firms, as I showed before. However, SMEs are so many in Japan, not only Japan, but also in other countries, and because SMEs are heterogeneous. So several SME owners or researchers have very good ideas. And also they have good know-how, maybe, or challenge ideas. So it is important to promote the ideas, good ideas, research ideas, SMEs, and to promote the collaboration between SMEs and universities. So the problem is how to bridge these gaps between academia and business. So the previous studies, including my own research, suggest four important management tips for successful and efficient R&D collaboration between university and industry. The first one is to find the best R&D partners. So partner search is important. The second point is to build mutual trust with their partners. So the trust is very important, of course. The third one is incentive. So it is important to consider the participant incentives correctly. So without incentives, they will not rightly engage in the project. So the project will not be successful. The fourth and the last one is to incorporate appropriate mechanism of project governance. Yeah, so the internal and external mechanism of project governance is important. But until recently, this problem or research topics has been largely ignored. So my last research question is, can public policy promote effective university-industry R&D collaboration? So a little more in concrete. So tip one, a partner search. Of course, it's not easy to find the best partner, not the first best. Do you know the first best? So the first best professor for private firm is the first professor you meet. So the first professor you meet is not necessarily the best one for you. So it is not easy. So it is easy to find the first best, but it's not easy to find the really best partner for you. So another one is, what types of managers find appropriate partners? So the top managers of private firms, especially SMEs, are heterogeneous. There are different types. And my previous paper researched what types of manager can find appropriate partners, which can lead them to better innovation outcomes. So in this line, we also researched the type of partner choice, that is whether the nearby partner is really better than the far away partner. So in management literature, it is argued that face-to-face communication is important everywhere. So, or then in this sense, if a partner, if a business partner or university partner is located nearby, then the face-to-face communication is much easier. But if the partner is far away, so for example, I'm in Tokyo, and the partner is in China or in Hokkaido and Kyushu, that is much more difficult to have face-to-face communication or cross-communication. But my own research shows that the nearby partner can be the first best partner, and so it is not necessarily the better choice. The last point is the role of public policy. Here we show that the government can make different types of support policies, but we argue that not just the subsidy, the direct or hard support, but more the networking, matching support, the so-called soft support is more effective. Another one is, another tip is to build mutual trust in the project. So in the organizational literature, we often argue the free rider program or opposition behavior program. So a partner, is reluctant to engage in a project, reluctant to make efforts to the joint R&D, and they just rely on the other people's effort. So this is free riding. And if a university professor obtains research fund from private firms, but he or she make somewhat different researches, different research from what is expected, then this may be opportune behavior. So that is not good. And the problem is how to stop this free rider problem or opposing behavior, but to promote more trust. Here, my own previous research compared between 3 countries, United States, Germany, and Japan. United States, South Korea, and Japan. And we analyzed 3 factors for trust building in university-industry collaborations. And my other research analyzed or estimated that public R&D subsidy can help trust formation. So the subsidy is not only more money, but also the subsidization can contribute to transformation in the project, and so indirectly lead to a better result. So about incentives. So the contract theory shows that it is important. There are two important conditions of efficient research contract. The one is participation constraint. So the contract is designed in such a way that every partner is better off in participating in the project than no participation. And incentive compatibility constraint means that each partner, each member is better off to have more incentive to engage in the project more than to pay less effort. So the balance of risk and incentive, or the cost and return, is important. So my previous paper analyzed the contract design of joint R&D project and showed that really that the considering of incentive is very essential. So we also analyzed or compared the cluster projects of METI and MEXT with very different policy schemes, and showed that METI project, which centered at local private firms, can develop more the incentives or motivation of private firms to the project, which can lead to a better satisfaction or commercialization. So the last point is the appropriate governance mechanism. And here we analyze the roles of especially government monitoring. So we show that a public R&D subsidy, so we regarded public R&D subsidy as contract research, and we compared the effect of strong project leadership by project leaders, or by the types of project leaders, and the role of government monitoring. And we showed that both are important to form appropriate government mechanism. Okay, maybe I don't have much time to precisely discuss my previous studies, but so this slide shows my research about the search method or search cost of private firms for university professors. So to argue that public support for partner search is important. So this paper investigated the effect of partner search on collaboration achievement, and then the relationship between the types of SME managers, top managers, CEOs, and their partner search. So I skip the details, but we found that controlling for the firm's characteristics, such as firm age, firm size, and the business field, and the project aims, CEOs, top managers with graduate school degrees like MA and PhD are more likely to collaborate with remote partners, not the first best local partners, but remote partners. And we also found that CEOs with academic degrees in natural science or engineering are more likely to search for partners via academic societies or academic publications, rather than the introduction by local neighbors and so on. So it shows that it is important to lower the search cost for better partners. So our suggestion that or our idea is that the top managers, CEOs, with higher academic degree are more likely to know the people, university researchers. So they are likely to know because of connection to their supervisors or because of their universities, they know that in which field, which professor may be the best expert in this field, or which university professor is more likely to collaborate with small business and so on. And this also applies to the partner search for academic society via academic publication societies. So, but it's not applicable to all small business owners or researchers. So I suggest that the government should play the role of mitigator between in the partner search between private business and universities. So the government policy to promote or to make easy the partner search would be the cluster policy performed by METI and MEXT. So this paper examined the effect of METI's industrial cluster project on the R&D productivity of the participant project. So with a different estimation method, we found that the cluster participation or cluster registration, pure registration, makes nothing, has no effect. You know, this is very easy to register in the cluster program. So you open the website of the cluster and you just push the button. I enter the cluster. And your name, your company name, your address, your mail address, that's all. So we found that 40% of the cluster registrants did nothing after registration. No cluster engagement. So it's important not only to participate in the cluster, but it is more important, effective to collaborate. It is more important to engage in the cluster activities. And we also found that it is important and more effective to collaborate with outside cluster than inside the cluster university, you know. So if you collaborate with inside the cluster university, then you are likely to meet the first best professor. So you should easily find your first partner in your city. But this first best professor is not necessarily the best partner for you. Maybe not the best expert in Japan, or not the best person for you. Do you understand? But these firms that collaborate with the university professors outside cluster searched for these guys or ladies via publications, academic societies, meetings. So, but last message is that collaboration with the core university in the cluster is effective. So it's a point. The cluster policy focuses to promote the collaboration of local firms with the local core university, for example, the core national university in the prefecture. So this is a very important point in this regional cluster policy. And indeed, the firms which collaborate with the core university in the cluster was effective in R&D productivity. So another research in the same line then compared the effects of different types of government support within the cluster program. So we compared between the hard support, namely with a subsidy, and soft support, namely matching coordination and networking support in METI's cluster program. So interestingly, so if we found that these cluster support measures were all somewhat effective to promote a joint R&D project within a cluster. But we found that rather soft support measures like matching and networking with universities or with banks or with trading partners and so on were found to be more efficient than direct support, namely subsidy. So you know that 95% of the budget of the government cluster program was for the subsidy. And the budget for the networking and matching event was only 5% of the total budget. But the soft support and hard support had the almost same effect to the project outcomes. It means that soft support was in general more effective. Okay, the last section. We also analyzed whether the public subsidy program promoted mutual trust. So at the baseline, this project compared the factors of trust formation within the university-industry collaboration between USA, Japan, and South Korea. And we found that 3 factors are important to form mutual trust in the early stage of collaboration, namely a previous relationship between partners before the project start, and the partner reputation, and contractual assurance. So based on this research, our other project confirmed the effect of project subsidy on trust formation. For project partners via government monitoring, formal contracting, and publication of final evaluation. So you know that if you engage in government-supported R&D project, for example, under the METI's cluster project, then they have to have the internal contract, formal contract with all of your partners. So project contract, internal contract. And this formal contract was monitored by the government. And after the project, you have to supply, you have to offer the project report to the government, which will be then published on the government website. So if you have a bad coordination in the project, then it also published. Also that then after the bad coordination, then your project is less likely to achieve further support in next step. So these mechanisms in the government subsidy program support the formation of mutual support in the project. So which are these findings. So, and we also find that indirect effect of subsidy to trust mediates the direct effect on performance. So, and the subsidy directly enhances the project performance, but a major part of this mechanism comes from the trust formation by subsidy. So this was our finding. So the last report is here about, sorry, not a report, but not the last report, but so it showed that it is important to consider rightly the incentive commitment, especially by industry partners. So the first paper just look on the different universities' IP policies, intellectual property policies on the farm incentives, but I skip this paper. Another paper compares the effect of METI's and MEC's cluster policies, which have the same aims of regional innovation promotion, but very constructive rules on participating firms' commitment and the project outcomes. So, in short, METI's project focused on only universities. Because this is a Ministry of Education Science, METI's only supported, METI's gave fund only to university professors, not to the business partners. So then, the project member, project leader, which is a university professor, provided some money to business partners as research contract, just contract, not members. But METI cluster program was different. So in METI cluster program, also private firms, also SMEs can be the project leader. So not just university professors, but in the majority of cases of METI project, the project leaders were the farm managers. And in a METI program, both university professors and the farm managers equally participate in the research fund. So we argue that then in the comparison of METI's and next cluster project, the participants to METI's programs are more motivated, more have a high incentive to commit to the research project than the participant to the next cluster programs where where business partners are just the guest. Okay, so we found, comparing the participants of both programs, we found that METI, indeed, the METI program participants committed to the project more strongly, and that the firms with higher commitment enhances project outcomes totally. Okay, sorry, this is the last, or almost last slide. So we also analyzed how the public subsidy improved or can improve the governance of project, university industry project. So this recent paper addressed the governance of publicly funded university industry projects and investigated the roles of project leadership and government monitoring. So we found that when project leader is a private firm, so not a university professor, UI project outcome is higher compared to the project with professor leadership. So here we measure the project outcome as the achievement or early achievement of commercialization project outcomes. So project leadership by private firms is, in this case, better than university professor leadership. Another point that the stronger the project leader's role, especially in project coordination between the project members, the higher the outcome, so the earlier is the timing of commercialization. The last point is that the government monitoring matters. The stricter the government monitoring, especially the strict interim evaluation program, the government monitoring enhances the project outcome. So, and we found that regarding the governance of UI research projects, both the leadership, strong leadership by private firms, especially in project coordination, and the strong government monitoring, especially in the middle project, are important to the outcome, innovative outcome of the project. Okay, I summarized in this slide, and also the findings from previous studies. But the problem is that, as I told you, so despite this policy support, still most SMEs are reluctant and less likely to collaborate with universities and public research institutes. Also in Japan, but also in other major countries. So, and maybe we can discuss with you how we should, or how should the government or public policy in Jordan and the university in Jordan do or make for the further promotion of R&D and innovation in Jordan effectively. So, thank you very much for your listen to for your attention. And now we can maybe start the discussion with you. Okay.
Dr. Thank you so much for this. Okay. Maybe if you lower just the entire. Okay, take two with the audio. Can you hear me, Professor OKAMURO?
Oh, yes, I can hear you well.
Fantastic. So thank you for such an insightful and detailed view on the Japan kind of trajectory and journey to incorporate, to incentivize university industry collaboration leading to innovation. We would love to have, we were taking, active notes here. I know myself, I saw Dr. Ismail and Dr. Lutfi as well, and Dr. William engaged in taking some notes. So I think there was a lot of value, especially within regards to those details, the drivers, and confirming that through research. So that was very insightful. I'd like to open the space for some questions from the audience. I'm going to invite the person asking the question to come here, because this camera is not showing the audience. So perhaps Dr. OKAMURO can see you. Plus, this is the mic that he's hearing us from. So anybody has any questions, please, Dr. Lutfi.
Thank you very much, Professor. Very interesting presentation. I am very, very, very interested in the two roles that you mentioned, which was the hard support and the soft support. And I think that issue has never come up before. I was never aware of this issue. We've always thought of hard support, that we need cash. But the networking issue, I've never actually come across that, and that's been an eye-opener, a very, very interesting topic. Now, and I think this will be an issue which is of great interest to us in Jordan, I think, to make people more aware of the important role. And I think you mentioned it was 5% to 95%, 5% on soft support and 95% on hard support, but they both had the same effect. The 5% from soft support had the same effect as 95% from hard support. What I'm interested in is to ask you is there who carries out this role currently in Japan? Is it METI? Is it mixed? Is it still something that's being developed? So is there actually a governmental organization or an informal organization?
Okay, thank you for the question. So I introduced the result of my research. So on conduct, sorry, okay. So can you hear me? So I compared soft and hard support regarding the METI program because at the time we had data only on METI project, but also Mixed has the role to coordinate between the promote the networking between universities and private firms. So the person in charge in networking or matching the partners between academia and private business are heterogeneous. So sometimes they are university officials, such as university research administrators in, for example, TLO, or university offices for collaboration headquarters. But sometimes there are the local officers, for example, working on the local office of of METI, or the city level or a provincial level commerce or industry and commerce and industry, chamber of commerce industry. So they are very heterogeneous local regional players who match between university professors and business partners.
That's great. Anybody has Dr. William?
Thank you so much, Dr. Okamura, for the presentation. I'm a U.S. citizen, so I'm from the United States originally, and I'm particularly interested in the Bayh-Dole legislation and the opportunistic behavior that developed immediately afterwards, right? So I guess the question is, there is a great opportunity for industry and academia to work together to develop, to research and develop tools that are useful for the general public. How is Japan, let's say, monitoring that possible opportunistic behavior that can result from the interaction of academia and industry? Is it monitored mostly from a governmental perspective, or is it monitored mostly from a university perspective? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your very important question, important, interesting. But yeah, really it is a very difficult question. Anyway, so I argued that with my previous studies that the transformation in the project between academic and business partners is important, and that the government monitoring, government intervention can play a major role, important role in the formulation of mutual support. So for me, to form the mutual support is at the same time to mitigate the problem, or to avoid the problem of free riding or opportunity behaviors. So from the university side, after the policy reform at the late of 1990s, the university administration govern or control all project by the university professors. So each project by each university professor can be registered or reported to university administration, and then which can check or should check what happens in each project. So it may be an effective governance mechanism to avoid the opportunity from both sides. From the private business side, it is more difficult because, for example, so here is a small business owner, and who will somehow, as a free ride or who reluctant in the project so proceedings. And in this case, it is not easy for the university side to control the opportunity behavior or free riding by the business partner. But then the government monitoring, for example, by MEXT or METI, they should play a major role, especially after the interim evaluation project or the final evaluation project. They should know why the project went wrong. So the wrong member, bad member of the project will not be invited again to the project. So in the long run, the bad guys, wrong program members will be, excluded in university industry programs.
Thank you, Professor OKAMURO. Any other questions? Professor Dr. Ismail Hinti, President of the university, has a question for you.
Thank you very much for the excellent presentation, and it is really interesting to see that the challenges that, or at least most of the challenges that we're facing here in Jordan, you're also facing in Japan. So in many instances, we think that these challenges are unique to our situation, but then it is interesting to see that this is a challenge everywhere. What was interesting is to see that although national universities in Japan are much less than private universities or public universities, but still they have the largest share of university industry R&D collaborations. I would really appreciate it if you can explain what is the difference, the main difference between national universities and public universities and private universities in Japan, higher education system, and why do you think national universities are more successful in building relations with industry in terms of R&D? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So indeed, Japanese universities are very heterogeneous. But to go back to the history of Japanese universities, so the first universities were all national universities. So at the beginning of, not at the beginning, but in the 19th century, the Japanese government, the makes at the time, established the first imperial university, because at that time, Japan was an empire. So the first imperial university was today the University of Tokyo, and the government established the second, the third, and so on. In the whole country, the government established at the time 7 universities, 7 imperial universities that were all national universities. So the government indeed invested very much in research budget and personnel. Very much they invest in national universities, national imperial universities. But several private universities have also a long tradition. Some private universities started already in the mid 19th century. So, for example, the first still existing private university is Keio University, which was established earlier than Hitotsubashi University and earlier than the first imperial university, established in 1960s. So there are a few universities that has a longer tradition, and it means that today they have very large in size. It means that they can collect very large research budget. So the problem is not only the tradition, but also the research budget. So because the Japanese government in the first ages invested very much in a couple of national or imperial universities, so the research fund in Japan concentrated in these few universities. And the most private universities are latecomers. And many of them were established or transformed into universities after World War II. So they have shorter tradition, and they are in general smaller, much smaller size. And still now, most private universities obtain with a subsidy from the national from the government, but because they are private universities, the ratio of national subsidy is much lower than national universities. So earlier, 100% of the budget of national universities comes from the government, but today, the national university corporations, obtain only the half of our budget directly from the government. But anyway, so in general, national universities were established as core universities in the country and in the region. So the research budget and also the research staff, good researchers tend to have concentrated at national universities than local or private universities. So this tradition is still now existent, and it is now strengthened by the new government policy of selection and concentration. So government try to concentrate and select and concentrate the special research budget on a few research universities in Japan. And most of them are unfortunately national and former imperial universities.
Fantastic. Professor OKAMURO, I have a couple of comments and questions as well. It seems that for Jordan, and particularly in HTU's case, we're building a lot of momentum and we're disrupting a lot of the models currently existing in Jordan. And in one of the graphs you showed how, and Dr. Ismail alluded to that private universities were late to follow in the number of university industry collaborations. Do you see that as potentially inverted in an ecosystem, for example, like Jordan? Because my personal feeling, this is kind of an open-ended question for everybody in the room, is that probably private universities would be leading that conversation faster than public universities. So that's one point. And you mentioned a couple of things with regards to specifically the SMEs, right? And we feel that there's work to be done on clarifying that interface from both sides. But do you see, given that SMEs have, a small proportion or contribution individually to the economy, but collectively they have more of an impact, do you see some sort of clustering where universities such as HTU could deal with the SMEs as a cluster to raise for example, within a certain industry, to raise the overall baseline? For example, let's say in manufacturing, these are new technologies and new techniques that, best practices to be used, and kind of disseminating that across a wider scope. And then hopefully out of those engagements, then you can collaborate individually with specific individual SMEs.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. As to your first question, so the Japanese cluster policies by Mate Next, of course, not aimed at making university industry collaborations or innovation regions all over the country. But the model was Silicon Valley in the USA, Silicon Valley in San Jose. But of course, and they noticed that it's not easy, or it is very difficult to endogenously develop a second Silicon Valley in Japan. So the problem is also common to other countries in Europe. So the German government aimed at promoting as many local regional ecosystems or clusters and as possible with the core of local universities. So the basic idea is not just concentrate on the largest or best university and then the region, but in every prefecture, there is some core university, and the most local firms are SMEs. So the best policy idea is to form the local university ecosystems. So this is the major aim of the program, and this is also my answer. And this is also related to your second question. So especially in regional economies, the SMEs are major players. So in some regions, there are only very few large firms. Although some large firms with headquarters in Tokyo have research labs in local areas, but most local organizations are SMEs. So especially local national universities. So each prefecture, there's a core national university, which is also the core in cluster program. So each local national university has to collaborate with local SMEs. So they especially make big efforts to engage to motivate local SMEs or to attract local SMEs to have collaboration with their professors. So this tendency is so stronger and at the regions, at the regional universities, than the central universities around Tokyo. So in making the local collaborations, SMEs should play major role, and local have much local SMEs in the innovation.
Come to a conclusion of today's event. Dr. William would like to say a couple of words. I'd like to remind everybody of a QR code to give us your feedback on today's event. And for those who are interested as well from students, there are some handouts for studying in Japan. So, arigatou gozaimasu, Professor OKAMURO. It was such a pleasure, lots of insights and lots of learnings, and perhaps this is a conversation opener rather than a closure, and maybe next time you'll be live on stage in Jordan. So thank you very much, and I'll pass it on to Dr. William. It's been a pleasure to moderate with you, and we will be in touch.
Thank you.
Dr. OKAMURO, on behalf of the university, we'd like to thank you very much for this incredibly valuable lecture that you've provided us today. And we'd like to thank His Excellency, the Ambassador, and his representatives today, Mr. Toyama and Ms. Roka, who've come today. Thank you so very much. I would like to invite everybody who's here to coffee and tea outside, and while you will not be here with us in person, you will be here with us in spirit. Thank you again, and this concludes the lecture today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, then bye-bye. Thank you very much. Thank you.